Brother's gonna work it out. My name is Daron 360 Richardson. We're back again. Today's a potluck, an informational potluck day. Just riffing off of some of the things that I came across. Just for an example, like the last few things that I've searched. This is my search history. I have no fear. I'm a man who's not afraid of his search history. Like the last handful: libidinal economy, blackness, libidinal economy, Wilderson, post-structuralism, meaning, libido, winter with a Y. That's Sylvia Winter. Sylvia Winter, unsettling, something. That must have been like autocomplete. Potluck concept in West Africa. Libidinal economy, capital L, capital E. It's a book by Jean-Francois. I didn't take French. His last name looks like Lyotard. Lyotard. Libidinal economy. No humans involved. Sylvia Winter. And Sylvia Winter, I've referenced Sylvia Winter before in previous podcasts because of her work comes up. She's a very prolific and deep thinker, political theorist, writer, humanist, I would say. And so I mentioned Sylvia Winter before, and my partner Ray had mentioned to me to like bring up past references, like complete the circle, close the circuit. You mentioned these people and these ideas that you're going to address later. It's like, well, if you're struggling for ideas with podcasts, why don't you start talking about people that you referenced before? Start closing the circuit. So, yeah, that may not happen today. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to close the circuit on Sylvia Winter necessarily because I have more reading to do. It's not one of those things that you can like do, an AI summary of and then say, oh, yeah, now you have a full grasp on like the whole body of work for someone, theorist like or any philosopher for that matter, but for someone like, say, for instance, Sylvia Winter. But anyway, yeah, that's what I was looking up before. That's you can really tell a lot about a person by the things they search for, and so that's a little entree. Since we're still talking about French people, Jean-Francois Lyotard, a little entree into what I'm looking for, what I'm searching for. So I think the title of this episode would probably be on libidinal economy or like potluck of ideas, something along those lines. So I'm going to riff for a little bit. I don't know how long this one's going to be, but I'm going to riff on some things. So what's a libido? Like, what are we talking about? We're talking about libido because I could get into the libidinal economy, but like, let's break down libido first. Let me see. Let me find my notes. So like Google AI, and I want to say something about AI and why we call it AI after I finish this. But for the sake of, efficiency, we call it Google AI said, libido is a term that describes a person's desire to engage in sexual activity or sex drive. It can also refer to psychic energy, which is usually thought of as sexual, but can include other types of desire being an operative word there. Google didn't say that. I just said that. The term was first used by Sigmund Freud, a neurologist and psychoanalyst to describe sexual desire. In psychoanalytic theory, libido is derived from primitive biological urges such as sexual pleasure or self-preservation and is expressed in conscious activity. So there you go. That's what libido is. I'm the kind of person that like it only takes like a word or a couple words together that pique my interest and I can kind of figure out what it's up to based on the definition, the words contained in the little phrase. And so when I first came across the phrase libidinal economy, it really jumped out at me right out of the gate because I was like, okay, I think I understand that. And I'm just now thinking, I don't know what's more interesting, like how I got that how it resonated so quickly, like how I seem to understand that, or the concept itself. I think they're both equally valuable to think about it. So anyway, when you think about how I just described libido and how it's sort of your root primitive desires, and marry that with the term economy and what we think about when we think about an economy, accumulation, transaction, goods and services, and how everything that we think about the economy and how like our motivations in moving through an economy, like how that easily, like for me, it just made sense when someone put libidinal economy. I was like, oh, well, shit, that makes perfect sense. It would seem to me that like a person's activity with other people in like either securing stuff for themselves or exchanging stuff with other people, and working and providing and sustaining yourself, it would seem to me that like, yeah, that stuff is rooted in the economy of desire, the economy of like urges and instincts and following your gut. And it's funny how economists describe, they create like I think neoclassical, if like if memory serves me correctly, like neoclassical economists describe the economy describe the economy in such a way that it works with a certain kind of person, a person that may or may not actually exist, but this is a person like, I think that someone calls it the term economic man. And it's like this mythical creature who behaves in such a way that is highly predictable, highly rational, and this person is almost like a robot where they seek to optimize all of their transactions, their life, their work, their relationships. And as we know, like that doesn't really work across most of society. So that's like creating a person. It's a straw man, but in this case, it's an economic man. And they create that person, classical economists and people of that ilk create this person so that it's easier to say, okay, this is what people will do in certain situations. Now, I'm not an economist. I'm not going to get into the whether or not like it can be proved by some algorithm or some sort of formula or whatnot. The point is that economic man is different from what people do and like our true desires and what informs how we move through the world and how we interact with the world. Libidinal economy, like the economy of desire and like how we trade in like our desires and our deepest primitive motivations. That's kind of what I want to meditate on. I don't know if I have a direction. I don't know if this is going to go in circles or what kind of rhythm we're going to get into, but I just like that concept. I like exploring that concept of what's the true impulse for why we do what we do. We make a lot of like abstract pronouncements and excuses or rationalizations for the things that we do. And like, I'm really starting to think that like a lot of our stuff is just really rooted in like in the most primitive desires. Like, am I disgusting or not? Am I worthy of reproduction? And can I find a mate? Do I have agency? Am I capable? Like some of the most fundamental things, like animate what we're up to. I was looking at a friend's Instagram page. And so on their story, there was like a selfie. And then the next panel was a comment like, well, I know that selfie is going to get way more engagement than my previous story, post about, genocide and and protest and upheaval and you know, anti-imperialism, anti-racism, all that stuff. I know that was the next panel. The next panel was like, I know that's going to get more engagement than my posts that are, you know, challenging, that are dissenting posts. And my response was like, well, we do. Some would say that we live in a libidinal economy, and that's everywhere. I mean, like, let's just stop for a second and just kind of meditate on social media and how much desire is being farmed on social media. And even if it isn't the kind of sexual desire, it doesn't matter if you have this kind of sexual desire, whether it's like homosexual, heterosexual, whatever. Like, you're constantly looking at people that you're supposed to compare yourself to, and there's this desire that's being evoked. Don't you want to be like me? Don't you want these pecs? Don't you want this booty? Don't you want these lips? Don't you want this hair? Like, don't you want this shit? Don't you want this life, these kids, or whatever it is? There's a lot of that. And so my response to me was instinctive. It was like, yeah, we're living in a libidinal economy. It's all about desire. But like, no, that's what it is. As a matter of fact, to like put a finer point on it, dopamine is the substance. We all talk about it when we think about like rewards for behavior. But actually, what I'm learning more about dopamine is that dopamine is desire. It's the thing that keeps you desirous. Like, you know, it keeps your desire high. It's the thing that keeps you motivated, as opposed to the reward. Like, rewards are like endorphins and those sort of feelings. Like, oh, I feel good because I did, you know, XYZ. Whereas like dopamine is actually responsible for like keeping you in the game, so to speak. And so when you think about that, and you think about the kind of dopamine that's being elicited out of like scrolling and moving from image to image and story to story, and from object of desire or object of repulsion to the next, that keeps you in a dopamine loop. It keeps you in a loop of like desiring more and more and not getting what you want. So not getting like the endorphins, not getting the good feeling, like not getting the puppies or the kitty cats every time, or not getting the beautiful person every time, getting something that sort of is like repulsive from time to time, but keeping you in that loop of like scrolling. And so that's what I'm tying it together. I'm tying dopamine, desire, and libido to the social media experience. I wasn't sure if I was going to do that today, but, you know, I'm just going to let it do what it do today. But yeah, I'm proving my own point. I was a little concerned that I didn't have enough like written down on my notebook today. I didn't have enough like cobbled together on my phone, but it turns out that I do. I think I do. So I think I can prove. I think I'm proving that social media in general, Instagram specifically, or you take your pick, are really just economies that are based on libido and desire, and again, not always sexual desire, but sometimes sexual desire. And I think it's okay to admit that. It's okay to admit that like your desires that are sexual are not always about the consummation of the sex act. So the things that stir you like deep down, I think it's important to like recognize sort of those primal urges behind why you're doing what you're doing. And then maybe, just maybe, like you can find a way to sort of intervene when you feel that going on, like being mindful about like, oh shit, I'm feeling like something deep down and I can't quite describe it. It's this compulsion, this deep primitive drive, and there's an opportunity there to say, okay, this deep primitive drive, I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I'm going to call attention to it. I'm going to be mindful of it. I'm going to say, all right, what is this? Let's investigate. Let's figure this out. Let's figure out what this little thing is. And I think that's a good exercise. I think I would recommend it. I would highly recommend that. And that goes for all of those little primitive things. Like even if it's not even what I was about to say, anger. And maybe is there a way? I'm thinking, is there a way to connect anger and libido? Yeah, I think so. I think there's a way to connect those two. Because if anger is nothing, if it's not like the result of subversion of your desires. So not getting what you want can make you angry. As a matter of fact, that's probably the easiest way to get angry. Is something not meeting your expectations. And shit, desire is definitely when you want something or you want a particular, like, or maybe even want a person, that desire is, it's set up for disappointment. That kind of desire is so intense. Like when you don't get, like people kill, like people kill one another for unrequited love, or when people won't submit to their, to the person's desires. So yeah, I guess anger, there is you can make a connection that there's a sequential relationship with like libido, desire. Is the desire met? Is the libido met? And then if yes, then what do you do? And then that brings up a whole other philosophical conversation. I was listening to some philosophers earlier that were kind of discussing the book Libidinal Economy, and it's not very straightforward because it's like it's a philosopher's book, so there's a lot of other terms. It's not just kind of a flat explanation of like, this is what libido means and this is what economy means and this is what the two mean together. It's more of like, it's a meditation on a bunch of other stuff. Like what did I say? One of my search terms is post-structuralism. I'm like, what the hell is post-structuralism? I was like, for one, what's structuralism? Like, we're not going down there. This is not a philosophy podcast. It is, but it ain't that kind of philosophy podcast. We're not going to get in the weeds and be like defining all these terms, man. But yeah. Anyway, I almost lost my place. Anyway, we were talking about anger and talking about connecting anger with desire, with libido, and I think that's something to think about. Think about and this is a part where I say, this is for you. This is what I'm offering up. Like, think about how your anger is related to a primitive desire. Think about what you really want. When something made you mad, investigate what you really wanted and why you're angry because you did not get what you want. Which is a pretty deep but like fundamental and simple question or answer when you start asking why. Why did you get so mad? Because I wanted that person. And why you want that person? Because that person seemed like a good person to mate with, or that resource seemed like something that I needed to make me look like a person that is good to mate with or reproduce with or be around. It's like, well, why do you want to mate with that person? Or why do you want to have, like, once you get that person, why? It's like, well, I want to, some people are like, well, maybe I want to persist. Maybe I want to know that my genetic legacy will continue on after me. Maybe that's part of it. It's like, well, why do you want your genetic legacy to persist? Because I want to mean something. I'm afraid to die. Ooh, that got deep, got heavy. But, these are things you got to ask yourself. This is when you get to the root cause analysis. You wind up there. You wind up like, well, I want to continue on. I want to persist. And if you feel like that you don't have any guarantees of your persistence, then having children, passing on your genetic distinctiveness, is a way of completing a project that I can't remember who said it, but something like, sort of an infinity project. And maybe I'll have to cite that later. This podcast can go on forever because I always cite something or at least bring something up and then not have the citation on hand. So I'll have to talk about it again later. But children are part of an infinity project. And I think you can have infamous infinity projects. You can have benign infinity projects. You have all these different things. There are people that definitely will be known for a very long time for lots of terrible things, for horrific things. And there are people who are known for great things, for great accomplishments. So is that at the root? Is that the root? I don't know. I don't know if that's the unified field theory of desire. Like, is our desire to just persist? Is it only about persistence? Or is our desire about feeling safe? Maybe that's it. Maybe we want to feel safe. Maybe we're not even worried about the other stuff. We're not worried about what happens after. We're not worried about this fundamental stuff. We're just worried about like doing the thing, doing the loving, being loved upon, like being cared for, just feeling that for as long as we can feel it. And that's interesting. I almost every episode I bring up, and I'm thinking in my mind right now, just for context, I'm thinking about infinite games versus finite games, and I bring those up every time. It seems like every episode I bring that up. Like this, I hope this doesn't become the infinite game, the infinite finite game podcast. So the game that we continue to play, the infinite game, is like just being loved, to love and be loved, and so that's the desire. The desire is to like, I don't want this to stop. I want this to keep going forever, forever, ever. That's what I want to happen. But then there are other games, and this is all circumscribed. It all can be like contained within libido or desire, because there's an infinite game of like just wanting to keep the pleasure up for the pleasure's sake, enjoyment's sake, inside of libido. But then there's also a finite sense of libido when you like have to complete the thing. And that's like the difference between, edging versus like completion, like to get a nice little sexy metaphor in there. But yeah, that's like a finite thing. And like in your interpersonal relationships, a lot of people are consumed with that. And some people all they want is the orgasm. They want the finite. So that's like, it starts, there's a beginning, there's foreplay, there's the pleasure, the cresting, and then bow. Hopefully both people came, maybe not, given some of the orgasm disparities is kind of rough out there for, people born as female women, if you will. But yeah, that's a finite game within libido. It's like the desire to accomplish the thing. Like, what did we get done today? We got that done. But again, there are two forms, two ways that libido is expressed in that little example, in a way that's like sustainable, in a way that persists, and then in a way that's like performative, in the sense that like a performance must end. It has a beginning. You get your tickets, you start, you sit down, you enjoy the ups and downs and all the other stuff, and then it has a climax, and then you go home, or you go wherever. You leave the theater, the context, the place, or the bed. So what does that have to do with like economy? What does that have to do with me? What does that have to do with brothers gonna work it out? Well, I had another, I'm glad that you asked. I had another link, another little hyperlink in my journey with this topic. And the name Frank Wilderson came up, and he's a thinker, political theorist, activist. He's responsible. I don't know. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's responsible for Afro-Pessimism as a philosophy. And if you're not familiar with Afro-Pessimism, I don't know if I'm going to do it any justice, but I'm going to give like my version of what I think of when I think of Afro-Pessimism. I think of it as the understanding that since the invention of like anti-blackness and blackness being sort of this transgressive, this opposite of whiteness, and not only opposite, but like this like offending energy to whiteness. That being a thing, since the invention of blackness and anti-blackness, there's this acknowledgement in Afro-Pessimism that is an overarching philosophy. So it's compelling and like dominating. That notion penetrates anyone who subscribes to that, that subscribes to anti-blackness. It penetrates all of the ways that they do things, like all of their activity. It's invasive and pervasive, and it's everywhere. And so I came across this blog called Cosmic Hobos, because I was looking at ways that like Wilderson and Lyotard and libidinal economy and that term, and like how they're connected in this little triangle. For this example, I mean, it's bigger than a triangle, but in this example, this triangle. And I'm going to read a little bit of Cosmic Hobbes. It's a blog, just kind of randomly popped up on Google. It's a primer on the libidinal economy in relation, excuse me, to black folks. And it's as follows: like people, cosmic hobos. I don't know this person, like the cosmic hobo. Anyway, people who are interested in struggle need to understand the quote libidinal economy, end quote. Coalition politicals like Al Sharpton like to tell us to put the unique experiences of black folks in the backseat to the interests of poor folks more generally. Such politicians expect us to submerge our interests as black people on the assumption that if poor people in general benefit from a political concession, poor black people will share equally in such benefits. Such politicals will continue to ignore the repeated evidence that a lot of non-black people hate black people, even if doing so costs them money. If someone tells you that the problems black folks face are really just the problems that poor people face, they're telling you to ignore the libidinal economy. There's the operative phrase. They're telling you that the political economy of capitalism is more important than the libidinal economy of anti-black racism. And then this heading, I'm going to continue on a little bit, and then we'll do some more discussion. Or I'll do some more talking. We're not really discussing. You're just listening to this after the fact. But believe me, I don't know who's listening, but I kind of feel connected to you right now. I'm not going to lie. What is libidinal economy? In Red, White, and Black, Cinema and the Structure of U.S. Antagonisms, that's Duke University Press, black political theorist Frank Wilderson highlights the distinction between political economy and libidinal economy. And this is on page 9. Wilderson writes, Jared Sexton, another thinker on black Afro-Pessimism, describes libidinal economy as the economy of distribution and arrangement of desire and identification, their condensation and displacement, and the complex relationship between sexuality and the unconscious. It's kind of like, yeah, it's definitely Freudian. You can't talk about libido without being Freudian. Needless to say, libidinal economy, I'm continuing now, sorry. Needless to say, libidinal economy functions variously across scales and is objective as political economy. Importantly, it is linked not only to forms of attraction, affection, and alliance, but also to aggression, destruction, and the violence of lethal consumption. He emphasizes that it is the, quote, whole structure of psychic and emotional life, something more than but inclusive of or traversed by what Gramsci and other Marxists call a, quote, structure of feeling, end quote. It is a, quote, dispensation of energies, concerns, points of attention, anxieties, pleasures, appetites, revulsions, and phobias, capable of both great mobility and tenacious fixation, end quote. And so after that, Cosmic Hobo says, what does all this mean? And now I'm just going to start riffing off of that, because it talks about like just what do we mean when we say economy. And Wilderson uses the term political economy to refer to economy in the ways that we usually think of it, the ways people exchange materials. And I'm quoting now, what people exchange materials and decide on how things are valued. Economy doesn't just mean the economy in the sense of the stock market or banks, but also any means of determining whether something is worth doing or possessing based on how much capital and labor or power it yields. In struggle, we see over and over that money talks and bullshit walks. Economy has to do with what they value. What they value moves people to act. Economies are therefore very important to political action. So yeah, to summarize, is like value, like what we care about, and sort of like all the list when he like quotes Sexton, like just how we use our energies for everything. Concern, Sexton says, concerns, points of attention, anxieties, pleasures, appetites, revulsions, and phobias capable of both great mobility and tenacious fixation. So that's everything. That's everything that moves you, all of your stuff. You feel it. And like to kind of go back a little bit to when I was talking about social media at the beginning, like if that doesn't describe your experience on social media, I have no idea what else does. Like in any given time when you open up a social media app, you will be inundated with like things that are cause for concern, like ways to farm your intention, modulate your behavior or make you do something, your anxieties, your pleasures, your appetites, literally watching food porn. Like I've got a whole saved account of like stuff that I call Yes Chef. That's just like stuff that I want to make. Like I'm probably 12% through that. Revulsions, like, yeah, even that. Revulsions, like let's do a little tangent on revulsions, like, and how they keep you online. I talked about that in a previous podcast about our outrage, and the God Don't Like Ugly episode, and how outrage is like the way to drive you to social media. And so what you're revolted by drives you. It keeps you coming back. And I know better than to read comment sections. Like even on the most benign, like on really beautiful comments, like beautiful reels or videos or whatever. And it's just like, yeah, this is like a child, like literally, I just saw a kid, a little tiny little boy, and he had 3 baby possums in a little handkerchief. And apparently his father is a biologist, wildlife biologist. And I learned that of sort of like after the fact in the comment section, so I see it and it's just gorgeous. It's just one of those things that just gives you cute aggression where you just want to bite the possums and pinch the little boy's cheeks. You're overcome with cuteness. But in the comment section, knowing better, like just like, hey, let's take a look at this. Let's see what these comments are talking about. Let's see if it's just a positive feedback loop. Hell no, there's people being negative, of course. And it gets me every time. And I'm just like, when are you going to get out of this loop of going to the comment section? Like, I really wish there was a version of social media where you just got the thing, whatever the content was, and no comment section. Kind of like, like just imagine if like Netflix or Hulu Plus or whatever your, or whatever your app is for video streaming. Imagine if there was a comment section. Ridiculous. You'd never get anything done. You'd never ever consume anything without some sort of like interjection or some conflict or disagreement. But anyway, so revulsion and libido, and like, so it's clear that I have. Excuse me. It's clear that I have a desire. Like it's deep too, because that's the thing about desire. The way that libido describes it, these things are unconscious. So it's clear that there's something deep down that I haven't addressed about that attracts me to comment sections and attracts me to people to see if people are going to disappoint me. And maybe that's it. Maybe when I review content, it's like, all right, I'm looking for either confirmation of the goodness of the thing or whatever, or I'm looking like sort of like a hypervigilant watchdog for those humans out there that just confirm like some of my worst suspicions about humanity. Cause I really am a person that is like sort of ambivalent about humanity. I'm not gonna lie to you. I've had a real love-hate relationship with humans. Humans and humanity are two different things for me. I think this is a good time to take a little, just make a little explanation, like the difference between humans and humanity. Humans, to me personally, are just us, our bodies, whatever, human creatures moving around the earth and whatnot. But humanity is something else. It's and I've said this before, it's aspirational. Humanity is like a state of like all that we can do, all of our capacity in the best way. So like humans, you understand their depravity, like across the board, sort of an aggregate and average of it all. But humanity, to me, is this aspirational thing. It's this thing that we're working on. And again, I've addressed it before, but I think it's important to repeat it because it feels like it's part of a creed, and a creed is is useful in that way. Creed is something, it's an article of faith that you repeat over and over again. And so humanity is this goal, and I relish in my part in being a little more human, and not in the average sense, not like a human body moving around, but like this aspirational thing of like being someone that belongs and like is responsible for other people. And I cannot currently, this is the operative word. I cannot currently like separate my blackness, what I've learned about myself, my identity, as a black person who happens to be male. I can't separate all those things that I know from like this aspirational human project. Because like I said, I recognize that as part of, I recognize the work of being black and asserting yourself and reclaiming your sort of movement, your momentum of memory, like remembering your ancestors and everybody that's contributed to the state of affairs that make your life possible. All of that, like remembering that and remembering sort of the struggles, the triumphs and all of that stuff, and the point blank assertions, like not only am I human, when for so long entire academic disciplines assigned to Africans who were captured here in the Western Hemisphere and elsewhere, assigned to them a subhuman status. So and it's not the act of like not necessarily disproving that, but the act of asserting it, not disproving it, because you don't argue with people, you don't debate on things that aren't debatable. So your personal humanity, whoever you are out there, whoever you may be, your personal humanity is never up for debate, no matter who you are. So don't debate with people over your humanity. Please don't. You're wasting your time. And anyone that wants you to debate, like to establish like how human you are first, is only trying to distract you. Is only trying to slow you down. So if your protest or your engagement starts with, oh, but you must understand that I'm a human being. You must understand that I'm, a member of this greater humanity. Then you've already failed. You're already behind. You've already lost your power. It's kind of you're negotiating over something which isn't debatable. And so I just want to encourage those of you that have a particular story, a particular identity, and specific, I'm talking to you, Black people, Black men in general, in specific, to remember what it took to make you what you are, and apply that to a greater humanity. Apply that to like your best notions of what it is to be human. I hope that makes sense. Because like I said, like humanity with like a capital H is an aspirational position. It's somewhere to get to. It's like how can we search through not only the annals of history, but search through every corner of this planet and figure out like what's the best of us, like our best accomplishments, our best examples of taking care of one another, our best examples of persistence, of being resilient. And let's bring it in, like in this potluck of ideas. And make that part of what it means to be human. Instead of limiting notions about humanity to, the victors in conquest and what they have to say about their humanness, and how their humanness sort of after the fact is what made them victorious. And that proclamation by the victors, that saying, oh yeah, well, we won because of this, where our culture's better, or this is better, our language, our ideas are better. We won because of that. Even if they don't believe that, sometimes the people that are conquered or defeated in any given instance, sometimes they believe it. They say, well, their gods must have been stronger. Their technology or their whatever, their culture, whatever, that must have been better. They start to believe that. As opposed to understanding that like human beings can be brutal to one another. And in many cases, it isn't about who's necessarily who has this advantage or that advantage. Sometimes in human history, it's about who's more brutal, who's less humane. And those are the victors. Sometimes I hate to break it to you, but that's what it is. Sometimes it's just a matter of who was a little bit more, whose desire let's bring it back around. Whose primitive desire was stronger or more compelling, or made them more, this is better. Like whose primitive desire made them more bereft, conscious of empathy? Whose primitive desire made them cold, more callous, more brutal, less human, less connected to humanity? That's a better question. That's a better question. I feel in my gut that like, and it's not because I have a clock in front of me, but I can just feel in my gut that we're getting close to the end. We're getting close to like sort of the resolution. If there is going to be one today, and like what the moral of the story is. The moral of the story is to investigate your primitive urges, recognize how powerful desire is in every other thing that you do, and don't and don't be scared about it. Don't clutch your pearls about it. That's a common theme in like what I talk about here too. It's just like, once you learn something about yourself or about humanity, don't sit there and have a damn, like, don't faint about the shit. Just understand and embrace the fact that like human beings are not the fairy tale creatures that you want them to be. Acknowledge that we have those things, and like being able to acknowledge it is to be able to hold it, be able to give it residence without letting it take over your space. Like, let it come into the residence of your way of thinking and let it just kind of hang out and say, all right, yeah. And then, you control the house, you control the domain, and then you can tell it when to leave. And it's about gaining that power, that power over the way that you think about the world, the way that you think about yourself, being able to just say, all right, I feel that primitive desire, and now I acknowledge you. Now you're free to go. So yeah, the libidinal economy is what we are talking about today. I'm going to double check my notes and make sure I don't have anything else to think about or talk about. I think that's it for now. Like, I want you to think about how, maybe just another warning, just if someone's trying to leverage like whether or not you feel ugly or pretty or sexy or whatever else, whatever makes you feel valuable, if they're really trying to play with that, then hold on, then check them. Check whatever that is. Even if they're trying to, like, from selling you a car to shoes to whatever it is, to that final click or swipe online. I'm just want to encourage you to ask yourself, like, what primitive desire are they trying to provoke with this click, with this comment, this reel? Yeah, that was for you, whoever you are listening to this. I have no idea who you are, but other than like my family that said they're going to listen to it, but that's for you. And maybe we'll talk more about it later. Maybe we won't. And maybe I'll actually read some more Sylvia Winter and talk about her and some other people in the next podcast. Who knows? But yeah, big thanks to all the folks at Amplified, everybody that puts in all their work for Amplified. And Infinite Resources makes this whole thing possible. It's the juice, it's the power. It makes this thing go. It gives us the opportunity to mess around and pontificate. So, big thank you to all my people at Amplified, Infinite Resources, and big thanks to you for listening. So, yeah, Brother's gonna work it out. I guess we're gonna work it out. Peace.